Hello, everyone, and welcome to Apollo by Hyper. Today, we are learning how to raise investment through crowdfunding. For those who don't know me, my name is Sam Cuss, Director at Hyper, and I'm very excited to be joined today by Leila Oliveira, who is the Investment Manager at Birchal.
Hello,
Welcome,
I'm so impressed that you could say my last name right.
Lots of practice. Just before I introduce Leila and hand over to her, I just wanted to start by saying that, Birchal is a long-time partner of Hyper's, and we've seen many successful Hyper founders raise over $2 million plus in funding on Birchal's platform. So we're very excited to hear from Leila and Birchal today. And today we're going to be talking and helping you to learn how to raise investment and get ready and prepare to put yourself in that situation, that hopefully for those that are listening and watching today, that can be you. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Leila to introduce herself.
Thank you, Sam. I'm super excited to be here today, sharing a little bit of my story and a lot about Birchal and our process. Just giving an overview of the presentation, I will cover the advantages of raising via CSF, share the step-by-step that Birchal uses, and talk about some misconceptions about what we do. Please ask questions. I'm going to be sick of my own voice very, very soon, so help me out here. I'd love to start by introducing myself for those who don't know me. Sam, if you want to go to the next slide, this is linking to my LinkedIn. My name is Leila Oliveira. I'm originally from Brazil, as my name and accent give away very quickly. And I've been working in startups since I was 17. Back in Brazil, my focus was mostly in marketing, sales, operations, really getting the company up and running. But after finishing my master's degrees, I moved to Australia, essentially to learn English. I joke that it's been 5 years that I moved here for 6 months. And when I could finally communicate in English, I went back to startups, but from a different angle, the investment side. I was also the worst waitress you have ever seen in your life. So I'm happy that I could go back to something that I'm good at. Talking to investors every day, I saw that there's this massive misconception between what investors are looking for and what founders think that investors are looking for. So as I was talking to them and I was learning, I was posting about it and sharing all of my learnings on LinkedIn. They got really good traction. And this year I got recognized as a LinkedIn top voice, which I would never, ever dreamed of when I first moved here. And the reason why I think people connected with my content is because I oversimplify everything. I could use jargons and big words, but if I do, less people will understand my message, and that's absolutely not my goal. So if there's one thing that I would love for you to learn today, is how to simplify your message and your why, so as many people as possible can learn from you. I used to live in Bondi, very close to Hyper and Sam. And do you know how you would know that someone lives in Bondi? They will tell you. Sam, you probably have on your LinkedIn, instead of Sydney, you have Bondi. Is that right?
Yeah, probably. Very proud.
There we go. Last year, I started working for Birchal, and now I live in South Florida. So if you are around, let's connect. Let's go for a coffee. Enough about me. Let's talk about Birchal now. If you want to go to the next slide, Sam, thank you. We are the #1 community fundraising platform in Australia. Since 2020, we've got over 70% of market share. Just imagine your industry, whatever that is, having 70% of that industry is insane, and we're really, really proud of it. Also, in the last financial year, we got more successful CSF offers than ASX IPOs for the first time in a financial year. That really shows us that the market is maturing very nicely in Australia. As you know, CSF started 5 years ago. So in the next slide, we have, this is Birchal in a nutshell. We give companies a platform to tell stories, build communities, and raise capital. And we have done this over 200 times. I got some stats in the next slide. We facilitated over $200 million in investment. We hosted some of Australia's biggest CSF raises. And with that, we collected a lot of data. Every campaign that we host, we become better and better at reading that data and testing out the process. So have a look at the process. And even if you're not going to raise with Birchal, there's a lot that you can learn about building momentum for your offer. So this presentation, I really hope that can be very insightful, even if you're gonna go through another pathways. We actually raised capital using Birchal's platform twice, which we would never do if we didn't have absolute trust in the process. It's a very public offer. Everyone could see how much we're raising in real time. So it was nerve-wracking, but we got there. And last but not least, we have over 180,000 retail and wholesale investors in our database. Thank you. But obviously, you have different ways to raise capital. You can have bank loans, you can have debt financing, VCs, and these are not mutually exclusive. They can coexist. But people that normally come on board is because you're looking for the other benefits. So let me show you some of them. I highlighted 5 of the biggest benefits of this type of funding, and I got some case studies for each one of them. So in the next slide, we have the first one, faster access to funds. If you have ever raised from a wholesale investor, you know what I'm talking about. It's really hard to build momentum if the power dynamics are off. And if they can invest now or in 6 months, why would they invest now? And they know it. In the meantime, your runway is getting smaller, your offer is less investable, and you're visibly more stressed. We say that the raise is just completed when the money's in the bank. And I saw this taking years to happen before. With Birchal, the whole process takes 12 weeks to be completed. I want to make it super clear. It is a lot of work. It is still a full-time job, but at least you know when it's finishing. The second benefit, it's the increase in sales. People cannot buy from you if they never heard of your brand, right? So they can never invest on you if they don't know about your company as well. This is a very public offer. There's a lot of marketing involved into launching a campaign, and companies tend to see sales increase during the process as well. The next slide has a case study of a company that raised with us last year around 700K, and they saw 600% increase in sales during the 3-week EOI that we host. We see people buying before they invest as well. So kind of they see the company's profile. They say, in a high level, it sounds good. Let me buy from them, and then I make my investment decision. So that's obviously a very good side benefit. The third one that I want to highlight is how founder-friendly the process is. First, when you set the terms of the raise, everyone, either wholesale and retail investors, they invest under the same terms with the same pricing. So you wouldn't have the headache of getting your lawyers involved in every single transaction. In the next slide, we have a founder explaining the benefits of still having control of the majority of the business, especially in the early days. So you can have the ability of remaining flexible. They raised $1.4 million with us in 2022, and they went from CSF to IPO in 1 year. So this is definitely a great case study. In the next slide, I have Friday. Sam, are you familiar with them?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, for sure. Certainly heard of Friday before. Yeah.
This is the best case study that we have, one of the best ones, because they explored every single benefit of the CSF round. So firstly, they raised $3 million, which is amazing by itself. But they also got a customer advisory board from the raise. So they meet once a month and discuss the product. They got 1,000 people in the wait list before coming on board. And when they finished the campaign, they had 10,000 people on the wait list. 2 of the investors started working for them. They were senior staff, and I'm sure that they're still there. And they got $6 million follow-on round from a VC. So they got every single benefit that they could from Birchal, and they really explored that. And the next one, this is the most common benefit, is to have hundreds, if not thousands, of brand ambassadors. If you're ready to do a good job at presenting your business, imagine having 800 people doing that on your behalf as well. We had a webinar last week with Cass from the Community Collective. Thank you, Sam. Teaching founders how to engage with investors post-raise. So if you like to see that, let me know and I can send a link afterwards. This is just a case study of audience that done this process of having ambassadors beautifully, and they engage really well with investors, which inspire us to do the webinar with us. In the next slide, we can see how the process works. So I'm going to go through the step by step, but feel free to send a screenshot now if you like. The first step, and Sam, if you want to go next, this is the EOI prep. As soon as you come on board, you are introduced to a campaign manager. Can be me or can be someone else from the team. We're all equally prepared. And we have two main jobs. One is to get you ready on time for the alpha and make sure that you feel prepared. As prepared as you can. You're never going to be fully ready. And the second is to try and get your company more investable. How we're going to do that is by working on your pitch, your message, and your materials. Make sure that everything is very consistent and makes sense for your brand. All of that is pre-approved by our amazing legal and compliance team before you actually go live. So we're looking after your company from every single angle. Also, this is when we start working on your offer document. That is a requirement to get the company live. Best way to explain, this is a document as long as complete as an IM, but as pretty as a pitch deck. I think that's the best way that I can explain that. The second slide, we have the second stage, the EOI, AKA my favorite part of the process. You have two jobs in the EOI. You have to build and engage your list of investors. To build the list, we have three main databases to work with. The company's database is normally the easiest one to convert to EOIs because there are people that know you. They already buy from you or they know you personally. So you already have that trust element work on your favor. Then we have Birchal's database with over 180,000 investors, as I mentioned before, that some of them can potentially be interested in your offer too. And the third, we have the difference between our databases, but also with people that could be a good investor for you. We have a few different ways of engaging with this new database, but normally it's using PR, ads, and social posts. Our goal here is to get as many people as possible on the top of the funnel, understanding what you do and expressing interest on the offer. So we have a big list to engage afterwards. And then we go to step 2 in the EOI. This is to engage the list. In my opinion, this is the best part of the entire process at Birchal. Instead of just saying, founders always say this, if you ask them, how much do you want to raise? That kind of everyone is going to say $1 million. Thank you. But essentially the way that we do that is that we go to your audience during the EOI and then we ask how much they would invest. Then the platform calculates a ballpark range and presents this data to you in real time. Then you have 3 weeks to engage with investors, ask questions, discuss the evaluation, and you define a minimum and a maximum target to go live. We also host a webinar that I put there on the side so people can hear from the founders and ask questions before investing. So if you look at this process from the outside, what are we doing here that you can apply even after, if you're not working with Birchal? We're building momentum. We're building relationship between founders and investors. We're building trust and we're telling your story. So you're not going to investors and never seen you before and saying, hey, this is my name, give me your money. We're telling your story for 3 weeks before we even talk about money. And then in the next slide, we have the priority access. Essentially by this point, assuming that you've done everything right, momentum is built, we open the offer for the EOI list. So for the first 2 days, the only people that can invest are people in the EOI list. It gives them first access, but also they have a special payment condition so they can put the investment in now and just pay in 2 weeks once the campaign is over. That combined is going to serve as your lead investor. So 2 days after, when we go public, we have a much better story to tell. It's good for the company. It keeps the momentum going for the raise, and it brings more confidence to new investors. And then in the next one is just fun and games for you, not for us. This is where a lot of our work starts as well. We open the offer to the general public. so everyone and anyone can invest. You keep calling your investors, reminding them of the timelines, things that you would never be able to do in a regular round. You would never say to an angel investor, you have 3 more days to invest or you're out. Here you can say it. And then our finance team works on the settlement. We collect the money, we put in a trust account, we send the information to your share registry, and then once we get the certificate back, we release the money to founders. Hope that all makes sense. I hope I'm not going too quick, but yeah, if you have any questions, let us know at the end. Sam, can you go to the next one? So probably at this point, you're convinced. You're just wondering, am I a good fit for Birchal? Is that just for B2C companies? How does that work? And I have 3 main questions for you to figure this out by yourself. 1, can you get your message clear and concise? 2, can you tell a compelling story that motivates people to join you in your mission? And 3, do you have clients that love what you do? If the answer is yes, my answer is yes too. We've seen companies with incredible revenues not doing as well than companies with smaller revenues but better founder stories. So we see that people really want to invest in people and invest in ideas that they believe. So it's crucial for us that obviously this is a business, so people invest for the returns they're going to have. But essentially, in the top of the funnel, we need to get them through the emotional side. And this is what you want as well. If people are going to be your ambassadors, you really want them to connect with you in a deeper level. Thank you, Sam. As a highly regulated industry, companies need to meet these criteria in order to raise with us. First, they need to be a private or public unlisted company. Second, they need to have less than $25 million in assets and annual turnover. They need to raise using a platform like Birchal, have a minimum of 2 directors, and be based in Australia. Normally, if companies are super interested, but they are not sure if let's say you just have 1 director now, and you really want to do this raise, you have costs, and it's a kind of a boring process to assign someone else. So if you're not sure about it, just go on the website, put an eligibility form, or send me a message on LinkedIn. We have a high-level conversation to see if it's worth it for you to make all of these changes. And then once we have a plan in place, this is when you can make a decision. So we're super open to have conversations. And I add this slide because this is what I would do if I was going to do a Birchal round in the near future. So from today, I will start posting more on socials. I'll get my face out there. Founder to camera videos tends to work super well as people connect with people. I'll also gather feedback from users and make sure that they feel heard and feel part of the process. You can start a community. I think Sam can talk about this better than me on how to start a community and keep everyone engaged. But I really struggle to think of a company that wouldn't benefit from that. And I would be building quality content. So we always have new elements for people that follow us. In the end of the day, it is a marketing exercise. And just imagine you as a user, you're scrolling on social media. We always have those ads that we've been seeing for the past 6 months and we're sick of it. So as soon as you see them, you just pass by, right? But if you have new elements, new angles, new voices, new faces, you keep going back and watching the ad until the end. I'll also keep in mind that this is a very intensive process. It's basically a full-time job for 12 weeks. And I would need to make sure that I'm mentally prepared and also have support from the internal team to keep the business going, or external partners that Birchal can help you to get there. I added some of my posts in here, but we can talk about some of the misconceptions about CSF rounds. I probably hear this every single day. I hear some people saying, but if I raise with you guys, VCs are not going to invest on us. That's absolutely not true. As I mentioned before on the Friday example, but we have so many other companies that could raise from VCs before, during the round, and even after the round. I'm sure that you're all familiar with Zero Core, and they had a VC round with the Birchal round. So essentially the same terms, the same pricing and everything else. It does work really well for early stage companies, especially if you already have a community, but it works as well for growth companies. We call growth startups, the ones that already have over $1 million in revenue. In the last financial year, 44% of the startups that we helped were in this phase. So definitely works for you if you're looking for a pre-Series A or a Series A round as well. I heard so many times that investors in Australia just invest in property. They don't understand what I do. Again, this is a big part of what we do, is to make sure that your message is clear and concise so we can help you to get there. So even property investors can understand what you do. And one thing that I like to highlight from the legal side, especially to get ready for VCs or whatever it is they want to do after this raise, is that some companies, they terminate the shareholders agreement, they pass all the relevant provisions into their constitution, and this is when they go ahead and raise with us. It just makes the entire process going on more smoothly. Again, any questions, we do have a massive legal team here, and we love having conversations with founders, so we're always happy to help. That was really quick.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Leila. That was really insightful, and thank you so much for sharing the process and I guess the main benefits, which are fantastic. And I guess from our end, we've actually seen that happen live in market. One of the biggest things that I'm a massive fan of is what you mentioned around being a brand ambassador. If you can get 1,000 potential investors that put in $500 or $1,000, not only do you get that capital, but you're having, brand ambassadors going out there and sharing your story and telling their friends. So, that effect just keeps on rolling on, which I'm sure
I'm not going to mention the company that I invested in, but they are at Woolies. And every single time I go to Woolies, I tell whoever is with me, I'm like, so you should buy from this company. Because obviously as a shareholder, it makes sense for me as well.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. A lot of the similarities between just generally looking to raise funding and the process that you take founders through in crowdfunding, I think that's great. The notion of storytelling is so important. What really, I guess, I was writing notes down as you were talking. What really struck a chord for me was that, as you mentioned, some of the larger companies that might be listed or have, a lot more revenue than some of those that are smaller, that are selling a story, and I guess attracting someone a bit more intimately are actually, doing a considerably better raise. So that was cool to learn that.
100%. And we can change this focus during the campaign as well. We have a few companies onboarded now that they have massive revenue. So this is how we led with. We started by saying, we're doing $1 million per year, or we doubled the revenue over the last financial year. As an investor, yes, it's a cool story, but it's not what actually moves the needle, because how many other companies are doing the same revenue, right? So during the campaign, sometimes we put an ad up and we see that is not converting well. So we have the ability of mid-campaign with change angles. We go on another meeting and we say, cool, let's create some new content. Instead of focusing on your revenue, let's focus on your why. Let's get the founder to do a video in front of the camera and just talk about why he started the business. And normally this tends to convert better. So do that on a weekly basis. And I think all the learnings that you get from doing this campaign, you take for life, right? Your customers are your investors, and it's kind of the same. So if you see that talking about A converts better than B, moving forward that this is what you should be focusing on.
Yeah, great. That's fantastic advice. And the notion you mentioned around the founder personal brand, and you've just mentioned it then, I couldn't agree more. We ran a session last week on Apollo talking about personal brand and how to take those steps in doing so. And it's really funny on the other end, I ran a webinar with Andrew Gazdecki of acquire.com, which is on the other end when you're actually looking to sell. And one of the biggest advices that he speaks about is, again, investing in yourself, putting personal content out there, etc. So it's funny how at the start of the, I guess, ecosystem or the chain to the end is the same advice throughout. So it makes complete sense.
100%. And nobody talks about it enough, right? Founders should be posting on LinkedIn. I'm a big advocate for that. You should be telling your story. And Most of them say, but I don't know what to post. Just post about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Did you release something new? Did you have a cool conversation this week? Did you meet with someone that said something
Mm.
nice? Just share your perspective.
Now, Will, I've had this question as well. You actually did a post on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and the team here at Hyper actually loved this particular post, and I shared it on Apollo. And I wanted to ask you, and probably relatableness to being able to be a certified startup to put themselves on Birchal. For say a company or a startup, and for founders listening here that are pre-revenue and pre-potentially in market, what are some ways that you've seen to be able to demonstrate traction that does make them attractive to an investor?
Yeah, good question. So obviously, if we talk about revenue, it's such an easy way, right? I have $1 million in revenue. It's easy to showcase the traction. If it's before that, one, your personal brand is a really big one. You can present awards, you can present media coverage, you can put, if you don't have money enough or funds to do a full website, just put a landing page on explaining in a high level what you do and sign up to know more. So name, email, and just start engaging with those group of people. It's very different to investors if you go to them and say, I have this idea and it's going to be big, instead of, I actually have 1,000 people waiting for me to launch this. So it's a much more compelling story for investors as well if they see that you're doing your research and you know where to find these people. So you don't have to spend part of the money finding new users because they are all there already. This post that Sam's talking about is on my LinkedIn. So if you go there, I probably put like 20 points of traction. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Testimonials work really well, pre-orders, increasing website traffic, all of that can work in
Yeah.
your.
I couldn't agree more. And that's the biggest advice I'd give to people is just don't feel like you physically need to have something to give them right now to be able to engage in that conversation. Just go out there and have it, and being able to, I guess, highlight, as you said, a wait list or a signed, MOU, whatever it may be. Yeah.
Yeah, got a new advisor. This guy is really
Yeah.
good in this space, and they decided to work with us. That's big.
Mm. So another question I have around the type of investors you're seeing, and probably even just over time it potentially changing. What we're seeing from an angel investment point of view is that just traditional, mum and dad type of investors, people that might have 5, 10, 15, $20,000 spare, typically may have invested in the past into the stock market, whatever it may be, and now becoming a lot more confident and understanding to want to invest into early stage startups. How are you seeing that evolve now in terms of the type of investors that are actually coming onto your platform and investing into these startups?
That's a really good question. Again, we always say that Australian investors are very conservative, but if we look at the data, we see that Australia is behind the UK only in the per capita CSF rounds. So what we understand from that is that one, we're bringing companies that people actually want to invest on, which is great. And second, people are getting more confident into making the investment. And Sam, if I ask you, how much do you think that is the average investment on the platform?
In Birchal,
Yeah.
I'd say I'd say $5,000 to $10,000 per person as a guess.
That was too much, Sam. Let's ask again.
Much
No,
less, did you say?
it's a little bit less. It's 1,700.
There you go.
And we've been seeing it increasing even, everybody's talking about the cost of living now and how insane it is even to go to the supermarket. So I was a bit concerned that this would impact us, but it hasn't at all. If anything, we just saw this number increasing over the last year.
That's great. A good question here. I think it was from Ben. G'day, Ben. Thanks for chiming in. So we've seen on other platforms in the past where a user may invest and they retain equity within that company. Are you seeing founders getting a bit creative now where they might be first access to the product, or there might be some sort of memorabilia or a club for early investors? What are you seeing people get a bit strategic with the way that they conduct their initial raises and what they're offering?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we call this the rewards. Obviously, people invest because of the shares, So obviously they're going to get the shares as an equity crowdfunding, but we tend to put some rewardings as well in the middle of that, just to make sure that people are coming in first. So it helps with the momentum, as I mentioned before, and it helps with them. You kind of feel special, right? If you're part of the raise and then you invest first than everybody else. So it depends a lot on the company and what is their mission. If you're a sustainability company, you wouldn't be giving like plastic made stuff. So we had Recycle Smart planting 1 tree for every investor that was coming on board for the first 48 hours, which I thought it was super cool. It really highlights their impact and highlights their mission. We have other companies. I have one launching on Tuesday that they're opening this investor community just for moms on Facebook. So everyone that invests on the first 48 hours is going to have a say into the next products that they're launching. And they're going to be the first triers as well. Good and Fugly had a similar strategy. So investing the first 48 hours, they're donating food to schools because it definitely makes sense for the mission that they have. So we always help them to find something that it makes sense for the mission, if that answers.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly does. And you're getting some great comments in here as well. Thanks, Connor, for mentioning here. Yeah, just the power of through crowdfunding, lots of small investors makes sense, which is great. One question here as well from Lawrence, just around, does Birchal provide its own lawyers to provide legal clearances on the CSF offer documents? And what does the legality side look like?
100%. So when it comes to the offer document, we'll review every single thing about it. So you wouldn't need your lawyers to have a look at the document. We need your lawyers to have a look at your company structure. On that, we can give you kind of the best practice, but we're not going to be telling you what to do with the company structure. We can provide some examples, we give some guidance, and we have a few lawyers that work with us as well that we can always refer you back to if you don't have a lawyer yet.
And another question here is just around the administration with the database of investors. So once people have invested, what's it look like maintaining that relationship?
Really good question. As a general rule, the more you communicate, the more proactive you are, the less headache you're going to have, right? So nobody wants to invest in a company that don't hear back from the founders anymore. So there's the legal side and there's the best practice. Legally, once a year, you have to communicate with them and send, your annual finances and let them know how the company is doing from the financial side. But then we also think that if you just communicate once a year, you don't take advantage of the full benefits of this type of round. So Birchal used to communicate with our shareholders, that is around 1,500 of them. We used to communicate with them on a quarterly base, and now we're doing monthly. So once a month, we send an update and we say, this is how we can help you. This is how you can help us. If you have a company that wants to raise, this is the way to go. So we're giving them the platform to help us as well.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Leila, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us today. It's very, very insightful and hugely appreciative of your time. For those that would like to get in contact with Leila, what's the best way to reach you? You mentioned LinkedIn, but I'll let you take the floor.
Please send me a message there with the best thing that you've learned or the worst thing that you've learned today. But I would love to hear from each one of you that attended today. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of your day off to listen to us.
Awesome. And yes, again, any further questions you may have after this, feel free to post them in a polo and we'll answer them for you. In saying that, have a lovely afternoon and thanks so much for your time, everyone.
Thanks, Sam.